Welcome back to GNN and our continuing coverage of what officials have now deemed an aggressive cyber attack on U.S. communication infrastructure. As the nation's telecommunications network continues to suffer from widespread outages, the country's internet system is now slowing down to a virtual crawl. Communications with financial trading houses are almost at a standstill. Reservation systems for the airlines and other transportation systems have slowed or are not working at all. News outlets and bloggers are reporting that their systems are ceasing to function, and emails are taking hours to reach their destination. Officials in Washington are trying to assess the effects on major trading platforms, such as stock exchanges and commodity markets. Meanwhile, GNN has confirmed that U.S. authorities have traced the origins of this attack to a series of computer servers in the Russian city of Irkutsk. That information has fueled outrage on Capitol Hill, where lawmakers are calling on the president to press Moscow for information on the level of state involvement in the attack. For the latest on today's events, we turn to GNN contributor Joe Franklin. Joe, what can you tell us?
It's clear now that our worst fear that this bot attack has spread from the wireless network to the internet. You remember I said that the nature of this attack being a video clip that's in a digital data format could easily spread. And in fact, common practice is to sync your handheld smartphone up with your desktop computer to make sure that emails are updated, to make sure your directory is updated, etc. That simple act then passes on the infection to the local computer, which is then networked into the internet, and so on and so on.
All right, Joe Franklin, thank you very much indeed. This is Simon Marks for GNN.
All right, we've now seen a report identifying the source of this attack is coming from servers in Russia. The significance of that is not necessarily, I think, only that it's a data point in terms of who the attacker might be, but it means now we're going to face public demand, or the president's going to face public demand for action.
Just ahead, as the clock ticks, the situation only gets worse.
You're going to see planes being grounded now. You're going to see trains not taking to the tracks.
This program is a simulated exercise.
We've now seen a report identifying the source of this attack is coming from servers in Russia. Does this help us with respect to the question we asked earlier about we have the authority, active war, we can now take the kinds of steps that Joe Lockhart has talked about to really enforce the rules here on slowing this up?
Look, I am in the same point of hesitation in concluding that this is an act of the Russians as John was earlier. And my guess is that we are not going to get to a point of sufficient certainty in the time frame we need to have that be a critical element of our decision. I think we need to look at the effect on the United States and put ourselves on a war footing.
Secretary Friedman.
The potential is now becoming an actuality. The grid is seriously threatened in power. You're likely to have lights going off in hospitals before long. Air traffic controllers depend on the internet. Our economy does in financial transfers. So I think even if we still don't know precisely the motives of the people doing this, we know this has a major impact on national security, and I think we have to turn to exactly, okay, this has moved one step deeper into the entrails of the country. What do we have to do now to contain this and stop this at this point? It's no longer just in smartphones, and then we have to get on it and say, Madam General, find us the authorization.
Joe?
I don't want to put too much pressure on this group, but based on that report, we're likely about to lose many of our channels to communicate with the public. So what the parameters that get set out within the next half hour, 45 minutes, are going to have to hold. So that does argue for taking the most aggressive, expansive step you can take, because we are going to have problems communicating and keeping people up to date and reassuring based on the nature of the crisis.
I'm going to
Could I add a complication here? That I've asked NSA and CIA if they can confirm this report about origination in Irkutsk, and they cannot at this point. In fact, the prevailing theory is that these servers in Irkutsk may be only a hopping point for an attack that could be coming from somewhere else. We just don't know at this point. And I would say earlier, nothing I said earlier is intended to in any way dampen an aggressive response to this. It's just that without attribution, we can't go to the issue of retaliation, at least not based on intelligence.
But the concern will be, as you start losing communication in the States and in other places, that our National Guard may have to be called up to maybe help with some of the activity.
I think we need to be approaching this with open eyes, though, because if the director is right, that we don't know where this is emanating from, and we put ourselves in a war footing, we could find out later that the attack emanates domestically. So we have to go into this with our eyes open. I'm not arguing that we do something differently, but I think that we need to admit of that possibility.
Do we have to use the law of war to be able to act in the interest of public safety? This is the question that's been troubling me throughout this entire discussion. I mean, is there no way on earth you can't invoke the public safety of the United States as a legal basis for taking rigorous action?
Look, I'll make this really simple. Our laws are not set up for that. However, in times of extreme stress, presidents have acted without regard to the law and gone to Congress immediately and said, this is what I've done. And this is what President Lincoln did in suspending the writ of habeas corpus. So presidents do what they have to do, and then the question is, how do you make it straight with the American people? But I got to tell you, if you're asking me, do we have a rubric for doing this without summoning up all of the authorities of a wartime president? No.
This is a regulated industry. Everybody who provides telecommunications services is subject to regulation in the public interest. And we can take those authorities and tell them what they need to do to get this worm out of our system. We can find authority. It's not well designed for this, but in a crisis, we've got enough leeway to do it.
Secretary Townsend, yeah.
DHS has gone out to all the sectors, including healthcare, financial, transportation in particular, who rely on the internet backbone to tell them that their communications are vulnerable, and that you're going to see planes being grounded now. You're going to see trains not taking to the tracks. People are going to stop moving, and as you look at the map behind you and see more and more red dots, I support what Joe Lockhart and others have said, and that is we need to act.
Do we need to suggest to the president that he preemptively shut down aviation system and because of the air traffic control issue, shut down or call all the public health people in because they may not be able to be reached by phone later? In other words, do we have to mobilize the country on the assumption that parts of the country will not be accessible to communications over a period of 48 or 72 hours? Let me ask you, Steve, what you think.
I clearly think you have to notify people and ask them to be doing those things preemptively that they should be doing if their communications are shut down. Maybe premature to shut them down, but there ought to be things that people should be doing, even in the simplest thing, finding power sources in case the grid gets shut down.
I think we need to get more information from some of our friends around the world, too, to see how they're being affected. And if it's just isolated on America, then it's a little simpler for us to make decisions. But I think if it's more pervasive, it makes it more complicated.
And that's one thing I have asked our people to do, is to go around to our key partners, friends, and others around the world to get as much it's a circular instruction, in fact, to get as much information from other countries as to what they're experiencing, what they know, what they understand about the situation. We've also sent out some messages tailored to countries like Russia to say that, you know, we're experiencing this situation. We'd appreciate whatever information you might have that can shed light on this situation. And also, by the way, don't you even think about trying to take advantage of this situation in any way, shape, or form.
So let me ask a question. You know, we've talked about what we have to do here. We do have this report about Russian servers. If it should turn out to be the case that we can identify the attacker, and if the attacker is either a state actor or a terrorist group, what are our options for responding and, if necessary, retaliating if we identify the actor?
Up next, the pressure to retaliate.
We have, working with foreign intelligence services, CIA has identified the perpetrator of March Madness.
I'm Don Lemon. Here's what's happening right now. Ron Paul has gotten a nod of approval from conservative activists at a CPAC meeting. The Texas congressman got the most support for the 2012 Republican presidential nomination in an unofficial straw poll on Saturday. He received 31% of the vote. In second place, former presidential hopeful Mitt Romney. Former Alaska Governor Sarah Palin was third.